Let me move that over. So welcome everybody. How did everybody have a good weekend, a good couple of days of a break from this? Good. So before we get into days 4 and 5, I just want to make sure we take some time to review any questions that you may have had about day 2 and day 3. Anything that anybody write any notes down or any questions that you wanted to bring forward before we dive into these last 2 days of the RCA?
I don't think so.
No? Okay.
No.
All right. So let's get to it. Day 4 contains 2 distinct parts. If you'll remember, the morning we spent a lot of time on culture and cultural competence, and then we do that piece on power and privilege, including the power walk. We feel it's very important for coaches to be able to connect with the people that they provide services to, helping to understand their stories, where they've come from, what their obstacles might be. And the second half of the day introduces the concept of recovery capital. So we give participants some opportunities to create lists of local resources that might help somebody develop their own recovery capital and look at the different areas that they can find recovery capital in. We look at how to make a referral and what we should look at when we want to refer somebody to somebody else's services. So here's the agenda, and I did send this ahead of time. If you haven't gotten it, I'm sure you will. I sent it just this afternoon. Again, in the morning, we do a reconnection and review. As I stated, we spend some time on culture and cultural competence, followed by privilege and power, and then we do the power shuffle. In the afternoon, we provide an opportunity for journaling after lunch. Then the DVD that you all have, there's a presentation from the CCAR director, Phil Valentine, on there. So he talks about the CCAR experience. And so that's something that you can pop in after lunch and let that play out. Then, as I said, we talk about making a referral and recovery capital and resources before we go into the close. So that's pretty much how the day is laid out. So let's get into, as trainers, what we need to take care of. So just as we did in day 3 and day 2, we start off the day by providing an opportunity for huddles and mingles. And this is, again, giving people an opportunity to partner up and then providing them with a topic. And then after about 3 minutes, we'll tell the huddles to, or the mingles to huddle up with another pair of twos and have them talk about the same topic for another few minutes. And we give them a couple of different rounds of this just to give them an opportunity to review the content from the day before. We have them line up to form new table groups. Once they get into their new tables, we review the working agreements and, again, giving an overview of the agenda, which is the slide that I just went over with you prior to this one. Any questions about any of that piece?
No.
Sound familiar from last time? Okay. So day 4, cultural and cultural competence. So the morning of day 4 is extremely powerful, and we kind of begin by just looking at our own personal definitions of culture and cultural competence, and then asking each of the groups to kind of come up with their group definition. This kind of leads us to a larger conversation. And so one of the pieces that I'm just going to kind of talk with you about is that we want to make sure that people Um, I'm trying to think, like that people really remember what the working agreements are, and so that when we start getting into some of this very personal territory, that people really feel safe in the room. I know right now talking about power, privilege, culture, and everything else is um, extremely sensitive for some people because of the political climate that's out there. And so we just want to make sure to take really good care and try to value and honor all the different beliefs in the room. And really, this is, we haven't had anything come up in some of the RCAs that I've had that've gotten, intense, but I've had some trainers call me and just say, it was starting to get a little heated. And again, we're not there to judge others. We're there to meet people where they are. So we just want to have this conversation and just remind people that the reason why we're talking about this is because if we remember on day 2, we talked about values and differences and how we have an affinity to, talk to certain people, like certain people, and we have a lot of our own stuff that we need to discover and manage. And so what we want to make sure is that people treat every single person, equally who's across the table. And so we don't always get to choose who we're providing recovery coaching services to. And so if we have to kind of, think about some of our own beliefs and values and take a look at some of our biases and manage that stuff, we need to make sure that we do that as coaches, so that none of that gets into the way of actually providing really good recovery coaching. And so one of the other pieces, like I said, after this is the power and privilege piece. And this is where we introduce the concept of privilege using an article written by Peggy McIntosh. She writes about some of the limitations that she experienced while being a female professor at a predominantly male school body at a university. And she talks about how males were published more often than females were. They were cited on certain things. They were given a lot more opportunities than her and the few female counterparts that she had. And so we used that to kind of introduce this section. Now, on that DVD that I shared with you that has Phil's story, the CCAR experience, there's also a piece that Phil and Art do, which is on power and privilege. So if you remember on this day, when we get to the power and privilege piece, we talk about that power and privilege checklist, and that is on page 79, and it's the white privilege checklist, and it's from Peggy's article. And it's the one that says, I can or I cannot, if I wish, to arrange to be in the company of people of my race most of the time. I can or cannot avoid spending time with people whom I was trained to mistrust and who have learned to mistrust my kind or me. Again, these can kind of get a little, sensitive for people. But again, hopefully we've had enough trust built in the room that people take care of each other. But I want to just share that Phil and Art do a really good job on the DVD of doing a back and forth of this activity. So you can pop that in and let them explain it. So Art, if you haven't heard of Art Woodard, he is a gentleman. He's a person of color. He has done a lot of work on cultural competence. He talks about, he does a program called Racism of the Well-Intended. I mean, he's very skilled on this subject. And then his counterpart is Phil, who is a white male. And so Art gives his perspective to some of these statements, and then Phil gives his counter perspective. So it's nice to see them go back and forth, and then you're kind of like letting them kind of take, this piece out of your hands. So I know with some of this, it's like, don't shoot the messenger kind of thing. So if you put the DVD in, it kind of makes it so that it's not you telling people how they should be or how they should act and whatnot. And so I just offer that as, if you feel comfortable and you want to go through this activity on your own, feel free. But the DVD is also there as a tool, and a lot of people utilize it, especially if they feel that they don't really have a lot of experience facilitating these conversations, or if the two people that are presenting don't represent the type of diversity that they would want to represent to have this conversation. The DVD is there, and I urge you, if you feel more comfortable that way, definitely feel free to use it. Any questions on that piece?
No. I like it.
No?
Oh, yeah. That's a very good take.
Sure.
And ending.
Hopefully ending point.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we haven't had any issues about that piece. I haven't had any issues in any of the things that I've even trained on my own. And if I am training on my own to a smaller group, I will put the DVD in because I want people to see the two different perspectives. If Art says that I can't, be around people of my own race most of the time, that's an experience that I don't have. And so I don't want to represent that I know what that is or what that feels like the way he can and the way he articulates it. And the same time, when we do the RCA in Connecticut, because we have Phil and Art there both doing it live, I mean, it works out perfectly. But that's exactly why I tape them doing it, because I know that not everybody always has that opportunity to have two different perspectives in the room from the trainer's point of view. And so it's just a tool that you are more than welcome to use. And if you haven't seen it used even in your own RCA, the one that you've attended on your own, take a chance to look at it, because once they're done going through a few of the points on that white privilege checklist, they actually facilitate some question and answers in the room. And so as a trainer, you can stop it as soon as they're done, or you can actually watch how they facilitate some of those questions and then turn it off and ask if anybody has any of their own questions, just so you can see how they do that. Or even if you want to watch how they facilitate some of the questions that are asked, just for your own, learning, you can feel free to do that. But I do hope that you will find it useful. So the next piece that we close off the morning with is the power shuffle, or power walk. And this is the one where, as trainers, we read off comments or statements, and we give people the opportunity to walk. So in your trainer's manual on page 7, this is also one of those pieces that you may want to read directly from the manual, just because we want people to stay silent. We want people to understand the instructions, because this really has a very powerful impact if it's done the right way. And so this is where we say right there, this exercise is called the power walk or power shuffle. And the hardest part about it is that we do this exercise in silence. The exercise is primarily focused on noticing our feelings, so we remain silent in order to concentrate on them. And then this is the one that says, in a minute, I will call out the name of a group. If you identify as being a member of the group, I will ask you to walk to the other side of the room. At that point, I will direct you to do 3 things: to notice who is with you, to notice who is not with you, and to notice your feelings. And then I will ask you to rejoin the group. Some of the categories will be easy, such as if you're a woman, please walk to the other side of the room. Some will not be so easy, such as please walk to the other side of the room if you were raised poor. Since we do the exercise in silence, there will not be an opportunity to ask questions of me or the other participants. Just do your best with the little information provided. Then it says, and this is why I said it's really good to read these, there may be a time when you identify with being a member of a group, but you do not wish to disclose this by walking across the room. That is your choice. If you do not wish to self-disclose, simply stay put and recognize what feelings arise in you around knowing you belong to a group and that you do not wish to self-disclose that information. And then we ask if there's any questions. And then so on page 8 and 9 are the whole list of all the questions that we ask, or the statements that we read. So, we say, please walk to the other side of the room if you are a woman. And then once people walk over to the other side of the room, we say, notice who's with you, notice who is not, notice your feelings, please rejoin the group. And then we give them the opportunity to walk back. So the one thing I will say is that there are a lot of statements on here, and I've seen some trainers try to shortcut this process a little bit and eliminate certain statements to kind of get through it quicker. Please don't do that because we as trainers don't know what groups people identify with, and we can't just assume that we know what groups people identify with just by looking at them. And so it really helps to go through all these pieces. And if there are some that know people walk, then that's okay too. But mostly, I'm trying to think if I've ever seen nobody walk during any of them. I don't think I have. There's always been that opportunity for even one person to walk. And then that's part of the conversation afterwards. Once we sit back down, we take some moments to kind of sit and reflect on what just happened. And then we kind of go through, if you look at the bottom of page 9, we give them an opportunity to share their feelings and observations, and then we make the following points. We thank them for their participation. We talk about everybody at some point or another finds themselves in a non-power group, and then being a member of a non-power group comes with a loss of privilege, and no one gets to determine for another how the experience of a lack of privilege and power has been internalized. So it's kind of like their opportunity for themselves to identify with what that feels like. Nobody can feel that for them. And then for those of us in a helping role, we need to be aware of this dynamic in our relationships with recoveries. Now, this is also timed very nicely that there's an opportunity for that discussion, and then we allow people to go to lunch. Because it is a lot to process, and I think if we jumped right into another module, it would just, people might still be thinking of the previous one. So we move right into a lunch hour. Any questions about any of the morning information that I shared so far on day 4?
Any questions? Anybody?
No.
No?
It is very well.
Wonderful.
Going through it was very significant. When you could tell the people, the 20-some people that were in the class, this affected them, I think, more than any other exercise we did.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Absolutely. And that's why we want to make sure that we give it its due, because I find that when I do, train the trainers like I'm doing for you all, and when I do the 2-day TOTs in Connecticut and things such as that, like this is the one that always comes up as being the most impactful for folks. And like I said, even with trainers, this is also the piece that people are a little more nervous about. And like I said, I think a lot of it really has to do because there is such a change in people's, the way people talk about race and power and privilege, and, there's a lot going on with the administration, and so there's a lot of feelings on both sides of it. And so we just don't want, we want to make sure as facilitators that, we've created a safe space, that we're giving people that opportunity to share, but at the same time that, we don't let this turn into like a heated argument over, well, one is right or, the other is wrong. We really want to make sure that we kind of keep this as, as recovery coaches, this is where we need to kind of manage our own stuff. And this is where we need to acknowledge that, again, if you remember on day 2, when we said it's not the coach who doesn't have biases, it's the one who, has them and doesn't acknowledge them. We all have them, and so as long as we acknowledge them, so that when we do get into that coach relationship, those biases don't get in the way. And so that's goes back to, again, that leg of the stool where it's talking about managing our own stuff and really making sure that those pieces, whatever it is, don't come into play, and that we're really focusing on the well-being of the person that we're serving as a coach. All right, so then when we get back from lunch, we do the journaling. And then we get to put in another DVD and watch Phil Valentine give an overview of the CCAR experience. I'm sure most of you have seen it in your own RCAs. Phil is a very dynamic speaker, and he does a really good job of not only sharing the history of recovery support services and how CCAR kind of helps with all of those through all the different programs that we run within our centers, but he does a really good job at infusing his story along the way so that it's not just sit and get, he has a few interesting things to share, most notably as him being an expert fisherman and also a person who has done the hike of the Appalachian Trail. I know he's added a couple stories about that. So that's a really great tool. Again, use it, share it during that hour. You'd be surprised. Day 4 goes by so fast, especially if you use the two movies that are on that DVD. So the next piece is on making a referral. And so if we look at the manual on page 80, we give an opportunity for people to look at what we want to remember when we are making a referral. And there are 2 slides that share this exact same information. And so we don't give a ton of time to this. We just want people to understand, what they really should, remember when making a referral. And then we move into recovery capital, which is a little bit more of a dynamic conversation. So the module on recovery capital is there to provide participants with an understanding of the wide array of supports a recovery may need to sustain the recovery. So we kind of give people an understanding of, what are the internal resources and what are the external resources that somebody might have, to help them with their recovery. And so we give them an opportunity to do and jot down those 2 things on page 81. And we do that individually. And then we have them kind of work together to create a group list. And then once they have the group list, we have them report out, giving them some time to, ask questions or make comments. Then we provide them with an afternoon break. When they come back, we give them, which is on page 82 and 83, and this is new, an opportunity to look at their own recovery capital. And this is something that was taken from Bill White that he had developed on recovery capital. And then this just gives recovery coaches an understanding, or people who are in the class, regardless of they're going to be a recovery coach or not, an opportunity to kind of take a look at their own recovery capital and how well they're doing, you know, as it is, you know, and we always talk about that, you know, we need to help ourselves first before we can help somebody else. We just want to make sure that, you know, if we feel like we have deficits, that we're working on those, because that'll just make us a much better recovery coach. That means, you know, we're working on our own stuff while we're helping other people. And then we also have a better understanding of, you know, kind of looking at and helping somebody fulfill their recovery capital needs and goals and things, especially when we move on to day 5 and we look at the recovery wellness plan. And so we give everybody an opportunity to kind of do this, and then we have them think about, you know, using the recovery capital scale. Do we think that there's a baseline score to be a successful coach? And then, do you think that your score has to be higher than the person you are coaching? So just some questions to kind of throw out there at people and have spark some conversation. Any questions about that piece?
Mm-mm. You guys have
No?
any?
No.
All right, so this final module on day 4 provides an opportunity for participants to look and find a bunch of different resources and share information with each other. And so what we like to do is have easel pads or easel sheets up with the following headings: connectedness to the recovery community, physical health, emotional health, spiritual health, living accommodations, school, job, and education, personal daily living management, and other. And the reason why we put those up there and kind of keep those separated out, which is how they are separated out on pages 84 and 85 in the participants manual, is so that those are the headings that we look at when we're doing the recovery wellness plan on day 5. So it kind of gives people a way of kind of categorizing all the many different resources that they may be aware of. And what we do is we ask people to spend some time thinking about some resources that they may know of, with information on how to get in touch with them, whether it's a website, phone number. This is the one time that we don't mind if people are using their phones in class to look up information. But we want them to use this time to write information on the Post-its. So you want to make sure you have Post-its available. And they are to write one agency or one resource per Post-it and stick it up to the appropriate easel that's hanging on the wall. We give everybody 15 minutes to write all their resources down, and then we give everybody an opportunity for people to kind of go around the room and take pictures of things so that they can also have those resources for information for themselves. The one thing I will say, so when we run this in Connecticut, we try to group people geographically, because we get people from all over. So if you find, I know New Jersey is a pretty large state, if you find you have people from different areas of New Jersey and you want, to say, okay, people who are in Southern New Jersey, you work over here because, they might feed off of people and know of the different resources in those areas. In Northern New Jersey, you guys work over here and come up with some things. And then at the end, once they have those conversations, they build all those Post-it notes and post them, then everybody can kind of take a look at them. But sometimes it just gives people that additional opportunity to network and chat and share resources even while they're brainstorming on their Post-its. So that's something that you can feel free to do. And then, we can have people report out on the different resources. If people want to share something that they feel is like, oh, I know when I mentioned this in my group, nobody knew about it, so I want to raise my hand and share it. Or if there are people in the room who have their own agencies that they want to talk about, and have brochures that they have brought, that would be the time for them to do that piece. Then once that is over, we're at pluses and wishes. And so again, at the end of the day, we ask people what their pluses are and we ask them what their wishes are. Any questions about the afternoon of day 4?
Hey, Mom.
No?
Mom.
Great. All right. Now we're going to move to day 5. And if you'll notice, after the blue sheet in your trainer's manual, I think it's a blue sheet, should be a blue sheet, there's the PowerPoint slides, like as little thumbnails, so that you have those as well if you need them. And then in the very, very back in the book is kind of like a thumbnail of the entire RCA manual as well. This way, if you want to prepare or you want to kind of reference certain things, you don't always have to keep, both manuals with you. So let's take a look at day 5. Day 5 is a lot of fun because you'll find yourself as a trainer really getting an opportunity to observe a lot of the different conversations, because we really give the groups a lot of time to have discussion on day 5. And so this day introduces us to the Recovery Wellness Plan, which is the tool that they will utilize when meeting with the people that they'll serve to help set priorities and to create SMART goals. Through an activity focusing on self-care, participants are given time to utilize the tool. We also provide a practice coaching session where there's an observer, coach, and recovery, which gives immediate feedback. Time is also spent covering some potential boundary issues that could arise, and we close out by talking about next steps for continuing professional development. So on this day, we address ethical and boundary issues, we experience recovery wellness planning, and we practice all these newly acquired skills. So we've had an opportunity to role play on day 3, and we had an opportunity to do the skit on day 3 in the afternoon, but day 5 is really, we spend a lot of time in a lot of, either role playing one-on-one, and then in that afternoon, that really large section, I think it's like an hour and a half of just really coaches, coachees, and an observer really taking the time to act out some of the things and practice some of the tools that we've been learning all week. So again, on day 5, we have the reconnection and the review. We go into boundary issues, then we talk about self-care. We start working with the recovery wellness plan. Then we start off the afternoon with those role plays that I just mentioned, where we put people into triads. Then we talk about continued professional development and next steps. We close out the day with that wonderful closing exercise. And then we touch on evaluations and certificate procedures right before we dismiss people for the day or for the week at this point. Any questions about what we're going to cover on day 5? Okay. This is kind of like for the trainers, this is kind of like an easy day. Because it really is a lot of timekeeping. That's like the biggest thing that we need to keep track of today. So we start off the day again with huddles and mingles. We have people line up once again for the very last time to form new table groups. It's funny because in the beginning of the week, people always groan like, oh, we got to move table groups. By the 4th and 5th day, people are so used to it, they're kind of like, okay, we get it, and they see the benefit of it, so they don't mind. Once they get back to their new tables, we give them an opportunity to review their working agreements, and then we provide them an overview of the agenda. So I love the morning of day 5 because we start off right away with boundary issues, which are always very tricky for recovery coaches. If you remember, some of the roles of a recovery coach is friend and mentor, or a companion and things such as that, motivator, cheerleader. And so it's really easy because there's less hierarchy between a recovery coach and a person that they're providing services to for those lines to get blurred. There are definitely boundary lines there, and there should be, but it's easier for us because, there's not a lot out there on what ethics should be for recovery coaching. Although, we have some of our own guidelines, and now we have a whole big training and talk about that further. But we really want recovery coaches to kind of really think about, ethics and boundaries as they're providing services. So the first one that we look at is Raymond and Barry. And again, these are taken from a paper written by Bill White on ethics. And so Raymond and Barry are, one is providing services to the other, and they decide that they want their friendship to go a little further. And so it's really like, what should they do? And then the next scenario, we give people a lot of, very little information about Ricardo. He's the one who goes to a wedding and has a short lapse. And I say that in quotations because people then want to know, well, what is the lapse and what did he do? And again, the information we have is what they should just take and figure it out. What do you think a short lapse would mean? I mean, this is kind of one of those things where if you're in recovery when you say you are, we kind of have to just go with it's a short lapse. And so there's a bunch of questions about Ricardo. If you were his coworker, what would you do? If you were his supervisor, what would you do? And so we give in each of these scenarios small groups the opportunity to process them out. What would they come up with as a solution? And we give each of the groups an opportunity to report out on their findings, just because it's really good for the rest of the groups to hear all the different perspectives in the room. So again, as I mentioned with boundaries and ethics that we offer, CCAR has, we have our own ethical considerations for recovery coaches course. That's another 16 hours. I'm sure there are other ethical trainings out there. A lot of times people will try to, we already have ethics for clinicians, so we'll just have our coaches do that. Ethics for clinicians is very different than ethics for coaches. There are some very black and white lines that are drawn in the sand for what clinicians do. And recovery coaches don't follow those same, they don't have the same role. And so their boundaries can be different, but we want to make sure that they still have them. So the other piece I want to just bring forward is that we touch on boundary issues for 45 minutes. Most certifications in most states across the country who are following the IC and RC guidelines of requiring 46 hours of training want 30 hours of recovery coaching and 16 hours on ethics. So, any questions on that piece? So on day 5, we said that we give people an opportunity to look at their own self-care, because we know that self-care is very important, especially for those of us who are working in a helping organization or in a helping role. Sometimes, we give that experience of when you're in an airplane and they tell you, the stewardess comes out and tells you, You know, you should always make sure you affix your oxygen before you help somebody else. That's what self-care is. It's taking care of yourself so that you feel ready and able to be able to provide somebody with help. And with anybody who's working in this kind of helping field, sometimes, you know, this takes a lot out of us emotionally to help people. And, you know, and of course, you know, we do everything that we can to get people the help we need, to get them the resources that they need. And we take on a lot, you know, and we just want to make sure that people realize that self-care is such a huge piece of making sure that, especially for people who are recovery coaches in recovery themselves, that they're doing what they are needing to do for their own recovery, and they don't put that aside because they're helping other people in their journey. You know, we want people to still make sure that they're taking care of themselves. So we do this piece on self-care, which the self-assessment is on 97, and it's called 7 Dimensions of Wellness. And we give people an opportunity to go through this, probably about 5 minutes or so, to kind of just check off, you know, where they are in certain places. And then what we do is we provide them with an opportunity to pick an area that they would like to work on and that they'd be willing to discuss with a partner. And then we have them break up into dyads or pairs to share what the area is, to talk about what steps they might take to address it. And then we remind them that on day 3, we gave a whole outline of what stages of change are, and so they can go back and look at that and kind of see where they are in their process of making changes in this area. And so we give them each time to talk, we give them 20 minutes, so one person can take 10 minutes and the other person can take the other 10 minutes. So as the trainer, this is where we want to make sure that we're following time, so at that halfway mark we can remind people to switch, you know, so that everybody has an opportunity to share. And then after this, they go to a break. Any questions about the self-care piece? Okay. Next, we introduce the Recovery and Wellness Plan, and we provide an overview of writing SMART goals. And this is just the really simple. There is on the bottom of page 98 in the participant manual, there's where we have what a SMART goal is, that it's specific, measurable, realistic and achievable, and it's time-bound. So we don't want people to just make all these lofty goals and have their whole entire recovery wellness plan filled out all in one session, because that's not realistic. Nobody can work on all those different things at once. And so we kind of give them an opportunity to look at the plan, realize that this is not our plan as a coach, this is really the recovery's plan, this is their tool, so that they can give some thought. We're utilizing them as a resource, they're figuring out what their goals are, and we're helping them to work on them and to achieve them. So in this piece, we also talk about the headings again that we used on day 4 to look at different resources. Those are the headings that are in the Recovery Wellness Plan. And what we want people to do is we want them to practice. And so we have them go back to their self-assessment and think about that area that they wanted to work on. And so we have 2 copies of the Recovery Wellness Plan in the book, so people can feel free to write on one. I think it's really important to make sure that people know that, because sometimes with a resource like this, people don't want to write on it because they want to be able to use it with recoveries in the future. And that's okay, because there's 2 copies so that they can use one for class and have a clean one afterwards. And anytime that somebody needs one, we also can email a PDF out. So people can just get in contact with us and we can give them a clean copy as well. So at this point, we give people about 10 minutes to make a goal in the appropriate category in the recovery wellness plan. And we want them to write a goal and fill in 3 sections following the goal. So the steps they need to reach it, who else might be involved, and when do I want to have this goal accomplished. And we ask them to write the goal and the steps for themselves. And this is for anybody in the room, whether they're in recovery or not. And we give participants the time to write their goals, and then we tell them to pair up with someone in the small group and discuss your goal and the use of the recovery wellness plan. So we give about, maybe about 5 to 7 minutes for them to have those conversations. It's not anything that needs to be real lengthy, but again, this gives them another opportunity to use the plan. Again, they've already had a conversation about their self-care. Now they're talking again about the recovery wellness plan. And then right after they do that, we want them to think about how they would use this plan as a coach. So this is where we now give them another kind of role play opportunity. I want you to think about yourself in early recovery. Whether they're in recovery or not, somebody can kind of think about, imagine what it would be like if they're not. What we're going to use in the role play will be a second or third meeting between the recovery and the coach where the recovery worked on a goal or 2 in the wellness plan since the last session. And in this session, we will discuss his or her goals with the coach. Utilize the next 10 minutes to role play, doing his or her homework of completing 1 or 2 goals in his or her recovery wellness plan. So someone plays the coach, someone plays the recovery. You give them 10 minutes to role play this out. And again, like I said, this is why it's like for trainers, like to be that timekeeper during this day. It seems like it's like 10 minutes role play, 10 minutes do another role play, 10 minutes have a conversation. But it's really good because people really want the opportunity to practice. And so this gives them an opportunity to really utilize the skills that they've learned all week. Once they're done with this quick role play, that's only about 10 minutes, they're dismissed for lunch. Any questions about that?
No.
Okay. So they come back from lunch and they journal. And then they get into the role plays. And this is the one that I explained earlier, where we divide the group into triads. And so if you have an odd number of people and you have more than one trainer, you can have a trainer step in and be that extra person. If you need to and you have you can't break it up in any other way, you have a group of 4. Just have them spend less time so everybody gets an opportunity to be a recovery and a recovery coach. So we say that we give people about 12 to 15 minutes to go through each of these rounds, but in that group they may want to only use 10, just so that they can make sure that everybody has an opportunity. This is again one of those areas where I'm going to say, as the facilitator and trainer, you're going to want to remind people when they should stop their role play, give the observer a couple minutes to provide feedback, and when they should start the next role play. So all of the instructions are on page 12 of your trainer's manual. And this is the point where we tell people about, that they're going to have an opportunity to do 3 20-minute role plays. Each time, one person will play the recovery, one person will play the coach, and one person will be an observer. You will use the recovery wellness plan that you filled out in the last section. And that the scenario is, this is the second or third meeting between a recovery and coach, and the recovery worked on the wellness plan as homework between the last session and this one. So it's a little bit different. And the last time where we had just one person talking, they achieved a goal and they were kind of reporting on this. Now this time, again, it's a second or third session, but they just worked on the recovery wellness plan. And we're giving them 20 minutes. So we want to really give them that opportunity to kind of really get in there and have those discussions. So this is where we have the role play continue for 10 to 12 minutes or 12 to 15 minutes. And we emphasize that it's unlikely that the whole recovery coaching session will actually finish. We really want this to be like a true testament of what a recovery coaching session should be. And that really the whole point is to just practice. So the reason why we give them 12 to 15 minutes is so that once they're done kind of going through where the recovery and the recovery coach are speaking, we want to give the observer a few minutes to give feedback. And so from that point, we have them switch roles and repeat. And again, as I said, as the trainer, you're the timekeeper to help people stick to the time frames. You can also remind them, and it says down here, we want people to incorporate as many of the concepts that we have learned. As I stated, we've learned a lot of skills all week. We want to make sure that people kind of bring some of these things forward. So active listening, staying in your lane, crisis intervention, motivational interviewing, and so on and so forth. And so again, we give a whole 90 minutes for this piece. So it really is just walking around the room, answering any questions that come up, but really just making sure that people stay on time and everybody in the room gets a chance to play all three of those roles.
So in that one, they're
Any
doing
questions about that piece? Yes. Yep. So they're doing that simultaneously, and they can take their chairs and pull into different corners of the room, however they want to organize themselves. It does get a bit loud, but I think because the intensity of the conversations are such, we've never had an issue where people couldn't do it. And I guess if people wanted to step out in the hallway to kind of get some more quiet, they could. I think I mentioned, like, in our last RCA in November, we had about 60 people, and we all did it in the one big training room that we were in. It got loud, but everybody was able to stay in there and do that. At the end of this, they go to a break. The next piece, one of the really last modules that we get into, is continuing professional development and next steps. And so this is where on page 110 and 111, we give everybody some time to think about where they might have some gaps in some of the skills that we've learned all week, and where they maybe want to learn a little bit more, and giving them that opportunity to not go as far as writing a SMART goal, but what could they immediately write down as steps to help them achieve the goal of shrinking those gaps. So if somebody really, wow, that motivational interviewing piece is hard, I really want some practice, my immediate next steps might be to see if there's any videos or webinars on motivational interviewing that I can watch, which there's a ton, and a lot of them are free. So there's a lot of training videos and things on YouTube for a bunch of different things that people can just go on and take a look at. And so we give them some time to go through and do this piece. But then we also ask them, if you remember on day 1, we had them fill out the recovery coach roles and functions self-assessment. And this is where we have the motivator and cheerleader, ally and confident, all the different roles kind of broken apart, and ask them to kind of think about where they are on a scale of 1 to 10 in each of those areas. So we want them to go back and rate themselves now. And hopefully they'll see that they've gained some strength in many of those areas, so that they can feel a little more confident in, becoming a recovery coach or going out and seeking additional training or whatever it is that somebody would like to use this training for. Once we finish that piece, we go into the closing notes section, or the closing note exercise. This is the exercise where at the end of the day, we get everybody to sit around in a circle, and everybody has a blank sheet of paper on the back, in the back of their manual, that's entitled Closing Notes. They write their name on it, and as the trainer, you instruct them to pass their notebook to the right, and then they write a couple of positive affirmations or something to the person whose notebook they have, and then you keep, you write your affirmation, then you say pass, everybody passes their notebook, and then you write another affirmation, and you keep passing and writing until you end up with your notebook back in front of you, and then you can kind of take a few moments to read the affirmations that were written for you as well. While everybody's sitting there in the circle, you want to take some time to ask the group about any closing remarks or any final questions. And at this point, you may want to give some of your own remarks once everybody's kind of finished talking, thanking everybody for their time, for their contributions, things such as that. Any questions about that piece? So this next piece is the evaluation. And I really want to make sure that you all understand this piece, because this is the piece that we constantly get phone calls about. People have a hard time understanding what it is that they're supposed to do. And so I know we have a page in our manuals. It's all spelled out on page 112. But in the haste of dismissing people, sometimes I know trainers just kind of like, all the instructions are on page 12, so go and blah, blah, blah. You'll get your certificate by CCAR. And that really kind of does a disservice, because this is something that, for some people who may not be technology savvy, they really need this to kind of be gone over with them. So the one thing that I will say is that participants don't get certificates at the actual training. They have to fill out the evaluation online, and then CCAR, our system, generates a certificate for them. And so the only way our system knows to generate a certificate for them is if they fill out the evaluation. And so I have that all spelled out on this page, but I know not a lot of people read this whole page of information. So what I will tell you as trainers is, when you register your training with us, remember on the very first day I told you that there's a training request form that you fill out, and it has the two trainers' names at the top and the date, the sponsoring organization. It gives us all that logistical information. When we put that information into Access, we generate a class number. Each of your classes will have its own unique number. And I say that, so if I give you a training number for a training that you're running in February, and then you decide you're going to run another one in April, you need to still submit a training request form so I can give you another different number for that training in April. You don't use the same number every time. So you get your number, you're going to get a link. Lizanne, who is awesome at this, when you send your information into her, she will send you an email, and it'll spell out all of this information. So you don't have to remember it verbatim to what I'm telling you, but she will send you the full link for SurveyMonkey with your class number. So you could even copy and paste that link and email it to all your participants, so that they don't have to worry about, well, wait, do I go to SurveyMonkey? Where do I go? What do I do? Kind of thing. It's really up to you. But you do get it in an email so that you can share it that way. If you don't care to share it that way, that's fine. Just make sure people understand the process. which I'm going to share with you now. So for the RCA, this is the web address that everybody uses, except where it says XXX. That will be your class number. So everybody gets a 4-digit class number. So it will be www.surveymonkey.com/r/RCA and that 4-digit class number. On page 112, and I'm only going to show this to you because we actually have it here as well, www.surveymonkey.com/r/RCA with a line for them to put in their class number. And then we also have another line here where we say my class number is. Because when they get to this page of the survey, we need them. If you look down here, so here's the web address. They opened up Google Chrome, they opened up Mozilla, they opened up Internet Explorer. They're going to type in, I know it's hard for you to see here, but www.survey.com/r/RCA, and this one says 1898 because that was the class number. So they type this in, they get this lovely evaluation pops up for them. Down here is where they put that 4-digit class number, which you gave to them and they wrote on in the middle of their page on page 112. When they go through this evaluation, the evaluation isn't meant to be long or lengthy. Obviously, it's a week-long class, so it's not just something that's going to take 2 seconds, but somebody could get through it in 5 minutes if they wanted to. And so once they've completed that whole entire survey, they'll be brought to a page that further explains everything on this page again on our website. It takes 2 hours for certificates to be generated in our system. So once somebody completes the evaluation, it'll take 2 hours from that time for a certificate to generate and populate our website. That is on the bottom of page 112, or here, which is www.recoverycoachacademy.us. Every single person who fills out a survey can come to this website, enter in their email address down here where this orange button is, and their certificate will automatically pop up that they can download, they can print it, they can come back here whenever they want. So let's say they lose it, they can always come back to this address and get that certificate. It seems very simple, like go to this address, fill out the survey, go to this website, download your certificate. But I will tell you, we've had people who just go to www.survey.com, which is a site that does a lot of surveys. They've taken random surveys on the site and then that have nothing to do with CCAR and then wonder why they don't get a certificate. Yeah, I had somebody who took a survey on light bulbs. No joke. Yeah, so and couldn't understand why they didn't get a certificate. And I was like, oh, that wasn't our survey, but let me help you. And so again, you know, this is where when people call into us, when people email us, we get it. We understand that people don't always understand technology, and that's completely fine. We try to make the process very simple. We have everything laid out. But if you don't, as the trainer, help to explain some of this, at least show them in the class, you know, this is a web address. You have to put in this whole thing. Don't leave off the extension of RCA and the class number. They're going to get stuck. And that's the other thing too, you know, some people put in the RCA piece and they get to some other person's survey because they didn't put the class number in. And so we just want to make sure we provide them with as much information as possible to make it easy for them. But if they do call us, and because we get all these calls all the time, we will take care of them. This is again why we have that training request form and we put everything in the database. When they call us or when they email us and say, I took a training last month and I didn't take the evaluation and now I can't get my certificate, and What do? The first thing I'm going to do is ask them, who were your trainers? Where did you take your training? And when was it held? And then I'm going to go back to my database and I'm going to look and I'm going to see, oh, Nicole had a training on January in New Jersey, and this is probably the training that she attended. Then I'm going to go into that folder where I stored the sign-in sheet that Nicole remembered to send to me after her training was over and make sure that this person's name is on that list. If I don't have the list, then I'm going to email you and say, can you verify that this person was in your training? She didn't take the evaluation. She's asking for a certificate, and I don't have a sign-in sheet. And that's how we try to keep that pretty tight, so that people don't fall through the cracks. But I mean, like I said, it's a very simple process. The reason why we automated it, I used to actually go through and send and email certificates to every single person, which I just can't do because there's just too many trainings running all the time to be able to keep up with that. But also, certificates would get lost in spam. They would get put into junk folders because each of these emails had an attachment, and so people wouldn't get them. They were constantly asked, like, I didn't get it. Then I'd have to go in and re-find it and resend it, and it was just a really big hassle. Not to mention, this way, at any time of day, if somebody needs to, let's say I find out I have a job interview on Monday and they want to know that I attended the CCAR RCA and ethics, or let's say I'm going for my state certification and I need to show them these certificates and who knows where I put them from when I printed them last time, I can always go back to this website, put my email address in, and have a listing of everything that I've taken and print off the certificate as I need to. And again, we'll help anybody at any time. If
I guess. I just printed it out. No, I didn't realize. I was.
So you didn't get yours?
You missed that part of the training. He needs to go back to coach training.
No. Yeah. Well, no, but that's why so when I do the TOT, I really try to stress this piece because I know that what happens is it's the end of the day, it's 4 o'clock on day 5, people are running out and they'll be like, if you're, well, what do we do about evaluation and certificates? Oh, read page 112 and you'll be all set. Who remembers that? I mean, and I get it. I completely get it. And that's why if I can try to stress the importance to you in this forum, then hopefully, you will take some time to remind people of that. I mean, you could even do it before the closing notes if you want, before you get into that circle, so then after that point, people can get up and leave. Or like I said, what I do for the ones that we do in Connecticut is I actually send them an email and I state, here's the link. If you click on this, you will get directed to the survey. It will populate on a web browser. This is the class number that you need to input onto that page. After 2 hours, visit this website, put in your email address, and your certificate will pop up. I do that, and then this way people don't have to worry about like, oh, wait a second, I thought I wrote the class number. I mean, I have space on this page, but I get it. It's the end. People are taking selfies with each other. People are running out. It's the end of the day of 5 very long days. I cast no blame on it because I get it. It's human nature to be like, shoom, day's over, I'm gone. But this is a really important thing, especially if people want their certificate to show that they've earned 30 CEUs, if they need it for a job. I get more questions about certificates when people really need them. It's kind of like one of those things where if you don't need to prove to anybody that you took this class, it doesn't really matter whether or not you print this off today or tomorrow or 3 months from now. But as soon as somebody wants to see like, oh, wait, if you want this job, you have to prove that you went to this training, or if you want this certification, that's when people look for certificates. And those are when we really get the phone calls of people looking. And we'll help people regardless, whether it's the Monday after the training, whether it's 3 months from when they took the training. We get it. Things happen. You get home, it's the weekend, you may not log in or even think about it until the following week. These survey links are live. We don't ever take them down or disable them. So if somebody comes back to me 6 months from now and says, I need to take this survey, it'll still be there. I can still give them the link to this class and they can still take it and still get their certificate. What's really good about this piece is that if everybody takes it, then when I go to run a report that I can then share with you to say, hey, here's all the survey data from your survey. It looks a lot better if there's 10 or 12 surveys in there than if I'm still like, well, I can't really give you a report because I still only have two done, you know. So we try to go in about 30 to 45 days after a particular training to kind of go in and assess to make sure that you know, the survey was completed so we can send you that report. But again, sometime if there's just a couple of people, we may let it ride and then we may email you and just say, you know, we've noticed that only a couple of people have taken your survey. You know, we're just wondering, you know, have you had any contact with anybody? Do you want to send out another email to your group? Other than that, we'll just send you what we have. We don't want to chase people,
And
but
we
at the
can
same
send
time,
that to
I know you
them,
want to get your
like-
data as well.
Like the day before the class, right? That Wednesday, in an email. Day before the class, right?
Well, we usually wait until the class is over or like that day 5, just because if somebody doesn't complete the whole week, you don't want them to have access to a 30-hour CEU if they didn't really attend for 30 hours. Yeah, so I'll usually do it like at the conclusion, or I'll let people that come to our CCAR trainings know that on Monday, you know, we give them all the information on the day of the class, but then on Monday I'll send them a reminder. And a lot of times that helps too, because like I said, when people get home, it's the weekend, they may not think about it, and then if they get that reminder from me on Monday, it might just jog, oh, that's right, I got to go in and do this. Here, let me do this now, before I get started in my week, and then it's all set.
Nicole, do you have those codes now? You don't have those codes for us now.
No, she have our train the trainer, our numbers, yeah.
Because
No, she have our train the trainer.
Yeah, I didn't do I can do a survey for this, but what we ended up doing is, Nicole, when you sent us all those agreements, Shanae went in and entered you all into our database, and she's going to send Nicole you a packet. It's going to have everybody's signed agreement back so that you have a copy as well as a copy of your certificate that you attended this. So that went out in yesterday's mail, I believe.
Code, you know,
Right.
to use, which Franny used immediately and got her certificate.
Right. I bet you did.
I did the
Yeah.
survey, but I just never printed out the certificate.
2
I
hours.
did it on my phone.
What's that?
Well, you have to go to this website to print it out.
Night.
You have to go to this website to print it out. Yeah. Yeah. So, and that's, you know, so that's the other thing that I'll let you guys know. So when I first started, as I mentioned, you know, I was emailing them out to folks from CCAR and doing like a personal email. I'd populate the certificate and send it out. Here's your certificate, you know, let me know if you have any other questions, kind of thing. Before that, trainers actually hand wrote the certificates and just handed them out. But it's really hard to do that because in this day and age where people are getting certified, if somebody's audited, it's really hard to kind of go back and track a handwritten certificate. Nobody had a copy of it. We never had any of them on file. And so now we tried to tighten that up. So, you know, if somebody does want to go for a specific certification, they can, you know, come and verify records with me because we have a record of everything, you know. Whereas before we didn't. So, and it really didn't matter, 6, 7 years ago, because this was still just starting. There weren't even certifications yet. But now that people are needing, CEUs in order to get certified, and people are looking for the certificate of completing a particular training program to be employed as a recovery coach or peer support specialist, it's more important than ever to have them electronically recorded. So, but we tell trainers when we changed, so when we went from emailing to now putting everybody, through this system where they have to go to the website, we do email all of you to let you know that we've changed a process. So in the same way in the agreement that we had you sign, that we state that we'll send you any updates to the manual, we'll give you all the latest information. We'll also give you, anytime we change a process for any particular reason, we send you an email with that information so that you have it. And you're all in our database now, so you'll all be added to our trainers group. And anytime we shoot an email blast off, you'll all be in that group to get them.
Great.
Any questions about anything that we've covered? I know it's a lot.
It's one of those things that's questions that come up as you're doing it.
Right.
You know?
It's true.
Right, absolutely. And that's why I said, Nicole, you can share my email if you want to forward my email address to everybody. Again, feel free to contact us at CCAR. Any time that you have any questions that come up along the way, or if you think about something like, oh, wait, in the middle of the training, this came up and I'm not sure what to do with it, feel free to contact us, because we're more than happy to help. And we want to make sure that you are, through this training, we want to make sure that you're prepared, but we always want to make sure that you're the most confident and comfortable with the training materials and what you're talking about. So anytime that there's that kind of like, I wonder, give us a call. We don't mind ever. Yes, absolutely. So it's Lize, so Liz, Lize, ANNE, all one word, at ccar.us. And then you can also, because our division or whatever is called CART, the Center for Addiction Recovery Training, you can also email CART, C-A-R-T, at ccar.us. So CART at ccar.us. That'll also get to her.
You also send out emails.
She looks at all of those general emails as well.
Do you also send out emails?
Everybody who goes into our email list will get all of anything that we send out. We always include our RCA trainers and our other program trainers so that you know what's going on, what we're offering in Connecticut. I know a lot of times once people start training the RCA, they also want to look at possibly taking some of the other ones so that they can then offer everything in their state. And so like any upcoming ethics trainings, professionalism, spirituality, you'll be on all those lists. So anytime we create an email and send it out to advertise something, you'll get it. And we try to be very selective. We try not to bombard you with emails every single day. There's only a few of us that use that email marketing system to send emails, and so we really do try to make sure that, we send maybe 1 or 2 a week.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else I can help you with, or questions that I can answer?
No, I'm okay at this point.
I think we're good.
Good. All right, so I will stop this recording, and Nicole, I will send it to you so you can forward it to everybody. And again, if you guys have any questions whatsoever, feel free to give me a call. I look forward to working with you. I'm excited to have you on board as trainers. And yeah, best of luck. Have fun with it.
Thank you very much. I
Thanks,
appreciate it.
Thank you all. I appreciate you taking the time.